Hi, I'm Chuck Missler, and I have the privilege of being with you through electronics to participate in your program, and I'm grateful for that. And I'd like to focus a little bit on the encroaching darkness that we're all experiencing and a remedy for that encroaching darkness. Now, as we continue to see corruption everywhere, throughout the highest levels of government, in our entertainments, in our schools, and in many of our churches even. Many of those in the corridors of power should be incarcerated for treason. Legislators that sign bills they haven't even read. Executives who are allowed to ignore the laws. Judges who reverse juries, amend laws, and indulge in social engineering. Leaders who fail to exhibit the most elementary ethical conduct. And at this point, I'm still anticipating that we're going to see an indictment of Hillary Clinton before the smoke finally clears. The entertainment industry celebrates every imaginable evil and attacks the family values, the very family values which God has established for our welfare. We have an educational establishment which deliberately dumbs and corrupts our youth. There was a day when you could rely on the fiduciary posture of advisors and counselors and professionals. Today that would be naive and hazardous. Every day the litany of non-constitutional abuses continue unabated. Every day self-destructive policies extend their reach. Every day it grows darker. Every day the debts grow larger, and they're already beyond any semblance of reality. We used to cherish the separation of powers, the rule of law itself, habeas corpus, posse comitatus, trial by jury, and we understood the difference between common law and civil law. Civil law being for the protection of the state, but common law the protection of the individual. The cancer of the entitlement mentality has even infected the middle class. The growing dependence of seeking government handouts ignores the reality that the only assets the government has is yours. To fulfill the growing collective expectation, they will increasingly confiscate your assets to fulfill their ambitions. If you haven't checked it out, check out Executive Order 13603, which authorizes the U.S. government to confiscate from its citizens whatever it feels is necessary. We've actually, in New Zealand, we've actually interviewed some inventors and things that are actively getting their intellectual property rights outside the U.S. because they regard in the U.S. to be hazardous in contrast to other venues. Shocking, shocking. So I love what Margaret Thatcher summarized so skillfully. The problem with socialism is that you soon run out of other people's money. This insurmountable debt is something we all need to face. We now have indebted not only our grandchildren, our great-grandchildren, 142 trillion at last count and growing. 19 trillion current that you hear about, but in the so-called national debt, but that doesn't count the 123 trillion of unfunded liabilities for Social Security, Medicaid, and other entitlement programs. Almost $400,000 for every man, woman, and child. And do you realize the U.S. government borrows 4 out of every $10 it spends? And getting worse. Remember, the borrower is slave to the lender. As the centroid of geopolitical power on the planet Earth continues to shift westbound, maybe abandoning the United States, can you also see a cloud of spiritual darkness emerging on our eastern horizon? That's a question. Europe itself is mired in the grip of socialism, and it's now discovering its sinister agenda and the deadly demographics of Islam. They're learning that, appeasing that, they're learning that the hard way. Meanwhile, the Middle East continues to boil, continually threatening lives everywhere, not just in the Middle East. And Those who ignore history, they claim, are doomed to repeat it. Now, America also has become the victim of a leadership committed to everything we once abhorred. Every time I pass a military cemetery, I'm reminded that it's filled with the bodies of patriots who gave their lives fighting everything that our current leadership is now committed to. And see, our founders in America worked very hard to avoid the instabilities of a democracy. It was liberty and freedom that garnered their sacrifices. It was a constitutional republic they gave us. But our complacency and apathy and ignorance has allowed it to get trampled into the dust of myopic expediencies. It's debatable whether it can ever be reestablished. You are now shackled to the chains of debts which can never be repaid, nor can your children or grandchildren. The light of freedom is quickly dimming, and we are all heading into the tyranny of a police state and the slavery of debt. Both Washington and Wall Street, both in their ways, are desperately trying to create the illusion or the impression of a recovery. They insist on measuring the progress on consumption, consumer price index, rather than production. The difference between consumption and production, the deficit, is what we call debt. America is now the world's largest debtor, frantically printing a currency, expecting that foreign banks are going to be foolish enough to overlook its eroding value. It's the greater fool theory on steroids, if you will. The year 2016 has been disastrous so far for the world economy and financial system, and the dominoes are now beginning to fall. The economy has been mired in a deepening recession, now morphing into a deepening depression for years. The Baltic Dry Freight Index, a commonly used statistic for global trade, is now 98% below its 2007 high, and it's 46% below its 2015 low. So a basic indicator is telling the tale. So we continue to talk about the myth of a recovery. While retail sales in the U.S. are plunging, Walmart's sudden announcement of 269 store closures, 154 of them in the U.S., and at least 10,000 employees are being laid off. Walmart has suffered its deepest crash in sales and sharpest stock drop in 27 years on reports that projected sales will fall by 6 to 12% over the next 2 years. So that's a critical measure we should keep an eye on. Economies are failing because demand is failing. Demand is failing because Americans are not buying. Americans are not buying because Americans are broke. Americans are broke because the central bank policy has deliberately created an environment of wealth destruction. There was a time when God blessed America. However, they then outlawed him from our schools and public places. They allowed their kids to be taught that the creation itself was some kind of cosmic accident. They shredded the fundamentals of life, marriage, fidelity, mutual commitment, in marriages and in other relationships. Now they wonder why our kids have no sense of destiny. They can't even find a job. I'm suggesting to you that you and I are being plunged into a period of time about which what the Bible says more than it does about any other time in history, including the gospel period. So that's my challenge to you, to get serious and have it reflected in your personal priorities. It's been a delight to be with you, and I look forward to seeing you face to face. God bless you.